Now, if there was a type of watch that was a gateway for myself getting into this world of watch collecting, it was the dress watch. With their unassuming looks and typically classical wearing dimensions, there's this sense of timeless elegance that a dress watch offers that really pulled myself in when developing my taste. But in 2021, the draw to owning a dress watch is not nearly what it used to be, just given the popularity of steel sports watches, as well as, I think, just changing norms in terms of timepieces. But with these two Grand Seiko dress watches that we're going to be looking at today, it might have you wanting to go against the current grain. So as I mentioned, there were a few watches that really spurred on my taste as a collector early on, and two of the brands that did it very well was Junghans as well as Nomos. So both of these brands are available on TeddyBaldassarre.com. Amazing dress watches. We're gonna be talking, of course, about a little bit more higher end dress watches today with Grand Seiko, but if you're looking at that $1,000 to $2,000 range, these are two amazing options to go for. Of course, really stemming from that Baja school of design in terms of their influence. You have, of course, the Maxbo collection, which around $1,000, I don't think really can be beat. There's nothing else truly like it. And as the story goes, basically going from famous designer Maxbo, taking these wall clock designs and then adapting them to be suitable for on the wrist and still look fantastic to this day, even 60 or so years later. And then, of course, you can look at Nomos, and I don't think these brands are so apples to apples. I'll probably do a review on these two coming up because I think there's a lot of people that just like, hey, which one should I go for? And it's not as simple as just saying, hey, what's your budget? Of course, that's gonna be the #1 indicator with them being a little bit higher. But for Nomos, probably some of the best dress watches you're gonna find in that $2,000 range. If these designs do speak to you, you can go for the Ludwig, the Tangente, as well as the Orion, which is the one that I personally purchased when I was getting into watches. Nomos, easily one of my favorite brands. Honestly, both of these are some of my favorite brands, and wearing my Maxbo chronoscope as I'm currently shooting this video. So check them out, TeddyBaldassarre.com. Also have some reviews as well of these timepieces that we can link to in the description below. Now, with the rapid emergence of Grand Seiko in the previous 24 months or so, I think it is not a little secret of what the brand does well. Advanced movement technology with their spring drive and thoughtful execution of hand finishing throughout their lines of timepieces. Yet when looking back to Grand Seiko's 60-year history, their connection to dress watches is just well documented, with both of these pieces offering a bit more of a modern take on the culmination of the brand's pursuit of watches of this type. And the two watches that we're gonna be looking at here today, first with the SBGK007, exhibiting a bit more of a modern evolution of the brand's approach to the dress category in terms of its style, and with the other offering a noteworthy tribute to one of the brand's first steps on the watchmaking stage with the SBGW259. So in this video, I do want to speak through these two dress-oriented watches within Grand Seiko's catalog and how there is going to be a bit of a balance between looking towards the past as well as looking to what is working from a modern perspective for the brand. And to speak to the reference that really set the standard and the piece in which the SBGW259 pays tribute to, it was a 1960 release from Grand Seiko with the Grand Seiko model 3180, or the first, which is commonly known as, that really put the world of watchmaking on notice given its work in helping to reshape the pervasive idea of Swiss and German watchmaking being miles ahead of the Japanese in the competition. But the 3180 caliber within was really the star of the show. It achieved a 45-hour power reserve and was the first watch from Japan to be compliant with cost parameters of that period. And with its precious metal case, tastefully balanced dial, and movement running within chronometer levels of precision, it was this general design that probably served as the most foreshadowing piece of what was to come from this brand of Grand Seiko and what we perceive them as today. So the SBGW259 was released alongside a couple other releases last year that were made to resemble the purity and symmetry of that original dial with the 3180 or the first, and while fusing in some just newer progressions, of course, as Grand Seiko commonly does. Now, the most obvious separation from the 1960 release was with upping the case from 35 millimeters to 38 millimeters in diameter, while showcasing a high-polished case manufactured in what Grand Seiko calls their brilliant hard titanium. So this is a titanium alloy, and it offers the natural benefits of titanium with its lightweight feel on the wrist, while upping the hardness to twice that of stainless steel on the Vickers hardness scale. However, it offers offers a reflective surface rather than a more muted and non-reflective nature of most titanium compounds, which is a nice bonus in the looks department. This of course assisted in large part by the Zaratsu finished surfaces, but unlike the stark lines of modern Grand Seiko cases, it leans heavily into the classically displayed lugs and vertical flanks of the case. With this in mind though, the wear offers a feel that would mirror the original, but of course with a more prominent case proportions that will still offer a bit of presence in the process given the longer lug to lug distance. Now the watch is held in place with a blue alligator strap with a smooth underlining that meets at a lightweight deployant buckle signed with the GS insignia. To follow the original tradition of the original Grand Seiko release, to which this one is going to pay tribute, the crown is used to manually wind the movement. It's going to be located at the 3 in that traditional format, and the central dial emulates the symmetrical layout. And perhaps the most notable similarity being the matching script of Grand Seiko at the 12 and the marking of Diashock jewels written in clean cursive typography at the 6, that as you might expect is referring to the jewels housed within, as well as the up shock resistance with Grand Seiko's proprietary shock absorbing system in order to ensure unwavering oscillation. But to further this level of familiarity, this watch also rehashes much of the same dial elements of the classic Grand Seiko, polished applied markers and polished edges of those sword style hands at the center, both matching the looks of the reflective polish, that Zaratsu polish on the exterior, which really does pop underneath the light. The surface of light blue ushers in one of the most notable aesthetic changes, coming in a light sunburst that will change in its appearance depending on the angle, turning to a vivid blue when examining from the periphery and more blue when looking at it straight on. Housed within the relatively thin case here, this watch contains the 2001 release caliber of the 9S64 with a Côte de Genève-esque style finish. I don't feel like it's right to call this almost a Côte de Genève finish given that it's from Japan, so I will just say that it offers its own twist. It also features a high polished reflective barrel and offers chronometric accuracy with a 3-day power reserve. Its up-tech is also inherent as a result of its inclusion of a proprietary sprung mainspring with the aforementioned resistance against shock to sustain its +5 to -3 seconds per day static rating, while tapping microelectric mechanical systems technology in the development of the escapements in order to honor the pursuit of chronometric precision brought forth by its old-time predecessors. So this movement's gonna be operating at 28,800 vibrations per hour, 4 Hertz, does feature hacking, so stopping that second hand in the process. In regards to testing their movements, Grand Seiko, of course, undergoes strict testing standards, testing their movements at 6 positions, so that's one more than that of cost standards, and undergo stringent temperature tests as well. But now looking over to the other watch we're going to be looking at, it's actually when looking at the back and as we transition to this SBGK007, where the window to what will be appearing on the front is starting to be hinted at here when looking at this manual 9S63. Now this caliber was released following the previously mentioned 9S64, offering much of the same of the previously described caliber with the addition of the added power reserve indicator at the 3 and the running small seconds at the 9. The case architecture style and dial design offers an experience a bit more in alignment with the modern approach one might imagine when looking outside of the historically intact models within the Elegance collection. Now the case coming in a slightly larger diameter at 39 millimeters, offering a larger surface area for that strong mirroring Zaratsu polish to take center stage when examining the anterior side. Now the faceted elements of the case flanks offer a bit more of an angular profile that evokes a bit more of some modern undertones rather than the traditional rounded off case style of the aforementioned SBGW259. Now housed within the right side of the case is a recessed crown at the 3 in order to serve as a middle ground of protecting the crown while not creating difficulty for engaging the crown to activate that manual movement within. Set on the silver muted dial that offers a subtle shimmer, there are applied polished trapezoidal markers cut with mirroring high polish on the sides, a bit of redundancy with the applied GS logo set right above the classic printed Grand Seiko script, and brushed steel hands with high polished sides at the center, as we have seen from the previous model. Now a complication that has become synonymous with Grand Seiko has come with their active use of power reserve indicators. Now perhaps one of the most useful complications out there, honestly, especially when it comes to the world of manual calibers. However, one of the challenges that deviates from the level of symmetry seen in many dress watches out there is how power reserve indicators just technically are set askew, at least for Grand Seiko's case. It's just usually favoring one side of the dial without the inclusion of a counteracting point of balance on the other end of the dial. And although I don't feel it is always a good idea to follow a formula when it comes to symmetry and balancing out a dial and what it should really uphold, yet there's no way around it that this is sometimes a point of criticism for Grand Seiko. Yet with the release of this dial variety, the sub-seconds at the 9 offers a feeling that subconsciously is just pleasing to the eye, offering perfect symmetry with the vertically angled power reserve nestled at the far end of the 3 o'clock side of the dial with that sub-seconds. Now, as mentioned at the beginning of this video, there's kind of been this gradual deterioration of the dress watch in the market. Now, I think this is a result of 2 things, probably, of course, some being from public opinion and just the changing norms out there in the marketplace. But on the other end, there's probably a lot of this that's being driven by the brands themselves and what they're putting out there in the market. And when looking at the 2 watches that we're looking at today with these Grand Seiko models, of course, maybe not having the same just popping nature in regards to their crazy texturized dial surfaces, but they have something else that is very true to the Grand Seiko ethos, and that is just balanced dial symmetry, still keeping attention in regards to that level of finish on the cases as well as those hands and the dial as well, maybe not just being as flashy as some others that we have seen maybe from the Four Seasons collection or the Snowflake. But there's another part of Grand Seiko's history that I think these start to tell, which is really that approach to detail and a point of pride for the brand and what dress watches as well as this design that you're gonna be seeing with that SBGW259. And I think that 1960 release was very much a point of course, historical relevance for the brand, but also Japanese watchmaking in general and kind of being an impetus forward and kind of now equaling out the playing field with the Swiss and the Germans in terms of what they were delivering from a watchmaking standard. And much of that has now just still remained to this day. And when looking at these pieces, sure, dress watches, I think for a lot of people, these are not gonna be the ones out there for them, but when truly looking at something from a modern perspective and around this $5,000 to $10,000 price range and what's out there, Grand Seiko is doing things their own way, but also I think these are some very attractive ones that marry a lot of the elements in which people like with kind of the classic elements in which allowed Grand Seiko to kind of set the stage for them and really, set the tone for what we perceive the brand as today. But all right, guys, I'd love to see your comments down below. Of these 2, which one would you prefer to go for? Which one kind of speaks to you a bit more? And then also just as kind of a higher level question, what are your thoughts on dress watches? Do you have one in your collection? I don't think you should always necessarily collect based on like checking off the boxes. It's got to fit your lifestyle and what actually works for you. But in reality, what do you decide to do with a dress watch? Do you ever buy them? Do you ever look towards them? Or you only steel sports, dive watches, and things of that sort? Love to see comments down below. But guys, if you did enjoy this video, thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That really does help out the channel. And also, if you're in the market for a dress watch, we have a ton available on Baldassarre.com. Also mentioning those watches from the beginning from Junghans as well as Nomos. Definitely check them out. We'll have links in the description down below. Full authorized dealer of all the brands that we carry. Quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, full factory warranty for all the brands that we carry. So if something goes wrong, you don't have to pay the bill for it. And finally, 9 out of every $10 that we generate from our store goes right back into the content, helping to foster up a new generation of watch enthusiasts. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.